Well, this morning I want to talk about neighbor, and I want to talk about the greatest command. The greatest command. I want to talk about being a good neighbor. This morning, have you ever tried to give stuff away? It can be tricky. Have you ever tried to bless somebody? Why is it tricky? You know, there are some people we meet that we're going, I'm not sure I should help them, right? Or sometimes we meet people where the type of help they need may be different than what I usually give. So for instance, there are times where if somebody obviously has a drug addiction, it's not good to just throw a bunch of cash in their hand, right? So what we would do as a church is we would take them and say, listen, I want to take you down to the store. I'm going to buy you some groceries, and I'm going to go down this gas station. I'll swipe my card, and I'll put gas in your tank. And then they go, well, you know, Pastor, that's awesome, appreciate it, but I really don't need you to do all that. If you just give me money, I'll take care of it. And I said, no, it's no imposition. I'll go do that for you. And then when they start squirreling and go, well, I think I'm okay. I probably got enough gas to get home, and they leave, I realize they just wanted money for the wrong reasons. And so you have to have this wisdom, right, in trying to help. You have to have wisdom to be a good neighbor. Have you ever had a neighbor that's, for lack of a better phrase, they're too good a neighbor? They're just always trying to help, and at some point you're just saying, I didn't ask for your help, and can you go back home? And, you know, or they'll come over and say, you know, you really shouldn't put your trash cans there. They should be like 5 feet over on the front. Because they kind of block traffic. You're just going, they're just trash cans. They're going to be there for a couple hours. I'm going to put them away. Can you relax? Amen. They're a little nosy, and so we're going to talk about what does it mean to be a good neighbor. What does it mean to help? I was thinking back at the times that I've helped people, and I've been in some really, you know, as a pastor, you bump into a lot of odd moments. I used to work in Hayward as a pastor. And I was the youth pastor there, and the previous pastor had kind of set a precedence in this church where homeless people just came all the time. The pastor literally would open up the window of his back office and hand out cash to people. And it was just really not a healthy thing. And so I was now the youth pastor, and they had this new pastor that was the lead pastor, and we were trying to kind of turn the direction around, you know. And I remember a guy came to the front, and we were right downtown, homeless area of Hayward. We had a fence around our church and our school. We had, you had to hit a buzzer to come through the door, to have the door unlocked. That's the kind of neighborhood it was. And I remember this guy came in and told me his grandmother wasn't doing too good. And so one of the things we started was handing out groceries, bags of groceries, you know. So if they came, I'd take them in the back and I'd just say, so how you doing? We'd love to pray for you, something going on with your life. And if you don't know the Lord, we'd like to lead you to the Lord, right? Well, this guy comes in and he goes, yeah, you know, I really want to know Jesus. And, I'd like to get a couple bags of groceries. I said, well, awesome, man. Come on in, you know. And we're in the back room. And I go, so do you want me to pray? He goes, no, I can pray. And he starts whipping out this prayer. I mean, he's better than me. He's prayed this prayer like 1,000 times. Just going, man, for a guy that don't know Jesus, he talks better to Jesus than I do, you know. So I give him this bag, you know, of food, and he goes, man, this is going to bless me and my grandmother who's in the wheelchair, and she can't talk, and all this is going on. So I give him the food, we unlock the door, we go outside, and then I go back to my office, and this gentleman had grabbed an elderly lady from a home and parked her in the front of our church, told me it was his grandmother. I gave him all this food, and then he left her. It wasn't his grandmother, and I had to find out how to get her back. And I'm just going, I did not see this going this way at all. You know, I'm in church. Yeah, somebody got saved. This is a great day. We blessed a grandmother, and I got this elderly lady who can't talk. Who I got to find out how to get her home, you know. She's going, man, this is weird. You know, it's hard to help people sometimes, right? You know, so I'm going through all that, you know, and I remember another occasion where, remember when first the ATM tellers came out, and they weren't very good at their locations. I don't know if you remember, some of you are too young, but those of you that are a little bit older, you remember they had all these ATMs, and there at the beginning, they weren't lighted areas very good. They didn't have cameras. And I remember pulling up late at night, going to get some cash, and I got some cash, and a guy slips out of the bushes in the dark and begins to ask for money, Well, man, this isn't good. I could tell this wasn't good. I could tell this guy was trouble, right? And all I know is I got 20, 40 bucks I just pulled out of my pocket. He just sneaks out of the dark, is asking for money, and he's looking at me like he's not really asking. He can take it if I got that sense, And I'm just going, well, how do I get out of this? Maybe I jump in the car, maybe I grab a stick or something. I'm trying to, I'm a little bit in fear mode, and the Lord goes, just give it to him. I go, what? We shouldn't give him some money. I can tell this guy just ain't the right guy, So he's coming at me, I'm backing up, and I'm backing into the light. Amen. I'm just trying to get close to the light, and he comes over, and I go, so listen, he goes, so dude, you got some money? He didn't quite ask. Dude, you got some money? Yeah, you saw me take it out of the teller. I can't lie, right? I mean, what am I going to say? No. I said, no, I got some money, and before... He goes, well, I need some money. And I said, well, listen, I want to, before anything, I said, well, I want to give you some. The Lord just said, just tell him you're going to give him some. Before it escalates, you just tell him you're going to give him some money. I'm going, all right, So I go, so listen, I'm going to give you this money, but man, I'm a pastor. And he's looking at me like, oh no, of all the guys that I get money, I'm going to get a sermon, right? So I look at the guy and I said, listen, so this is like God's money. So listen, I'm going to give it to you, but here's the deal. This cash right here is like God's money. And I said, it's not even my money, it's God's money. I'm going to give it to you, and I'm just telling you, if you use this for holy purposes, it will go well with you. If you use it for something you shouldn't, there'll be a curse on it. I felt like the Lord told me to do this. And I said, so I'm going to give this to you, this money. Reluctantly, I'm giving it to you, but I feel like God wants me to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you, and I'm just telling you. If you try to use it in the wrong way, it'll really come back to bite you. It won't go well with you. And he's looking at me like, you're the weirdest dude in the whole world. And he's looking at the money like, I don't even know if I want it now. Just like, dude, you scared me. I just go, well, I said, I just know I'm supposed to give this to you. And so I give it to him. And he grabs it. He starts walking away. And he's looking at the money like it glows in the dark because it's from heaven or something. He's just going away. And he's looking at it like, I don't think I want this money, But he leaves and I leave. And, I often wonder, Lord, what were you trying to do there? And for all I know, we don't think the way the Lord thinks, but there could have been a single mom with some kids come up to that teller just about 5 minutes after me, right? And I got rid of that guy. I blessed him and tortured him all at the same time, amen, for Jesus. He's just like, dude, I don't even know if I spend it. And then he's, I can see him with his wallet. He goes, I'm going to put it in this side of my wallet because this is the money that weird guy gave me. This is the money I can spend for whatever I want. But that one right there, he's sticking it like, I'm just going. And so you don't know what the Lord's going to do, right? The Lord will ask you to help people. He will ask you to be a good neighbor, but sometimes it's just tricky, isn't it? We're going to read a story in the Bible that says that you and I should follow the commandments of the Lord. And we look at the Old Testament, and we can go back there and we look at the great 10 commandments that God talks about. And those are awesome, and as we look through those, we should live by all of those. And as Jesus always did, he was incredible about taking somewhat of a difficult subject and giving you the cliff notes, just summarizing all of that stuff into something very practical and easy for you and I to understand. And there was these Pharisees and these teachers of the law, lawyers, if you will, and biblical principles of the Pentateuch and the Bible and the Old Testament. And they were asking him some difficult questions. And one of the questions was, what is the greatest commandment of all? What is the greatest commandment of all? And Jesus just said, I know you guys know you're like lawyers. You've got all your papers and your ducks in a line, and you know all the principles of the Old Testament, and you know about Moses. There's a verse in the Bible, and it's in Matthew chapter 22, if we could pull that up. And this is Jesus' response. This is the question and the response. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, he said, love the Lord the God with all your what? With all your heart. Love him with all your soul. And love him with all your mind. Okay? So that's, he said, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus' first response is simply, you've got to get this right. If you get this right and you're listening to him and you're trying to be the person God created you to be, then everything after that is a natural byproduct of that relationship. Isn't it true that I'm more loving when I'm close to God? Isn't it also true that I'm not so loving when I'm not doing well with God, right? If I feel like there's anxiety between me and the Lord, I've done something wrong and I feel guilty, my whole family has to pay, right? They're just going, would you just please go to the altar, amen? Just get saved, it doesn't go well, does it? And the good news is God not only removes guilt and fear and anxiety, and as those are removed, doesn't that position me emotionally, spiritually, and physically to be a better father, a better husband, a better wife, a better son? All of those things are true. So Jesus says that's the number one. He says this is the first and greatest commandment, but before he lets anybody else talk, look what happens in the next verse. He goes, but the second is just like it. It's just like it. The second commandment, we want to put, if you will, put both of these together, and if you have to just focus on one thing, focus on these two ideas. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And then he said, the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Everybody say that. Love your neighbor as yourself. So love your neighbor as you would want to be loved, right? And then, sometimes you have to be careful with that because I said it's tricky. I know how I want to be loved. When I'm in trouble and I need help, I want you to come over. When I need sugar, I usually go to the store and get it, right? I'm not going to come knock on your door to get it. But if you're not careful, here's what we do. We have a tendency to love people the way I want to be loved, right? We do that in our marriage. We do that with our kids. And unfortunately, that's not a good practice. If you've ever listened to one of my relational series that I do, we talk a lot about love languages, and that my wife needs to be loved in a different way than I want to be loved. But my first approach to making her feel loved is this. I feel loved when somebody performs a task that helps me accomplish all that I'm trying to do. That's one of my love languages. So since I feel loved by that, then I'm going to do the same thing with her because I know it'll work for her because it works for me. And the truth is, it doesn't always work, does it? What we know is this, so there's at least 5 love languages. There's touch. Some people have the love language of touch. They want to hold your hand going down the mall and in the car and wherever you go. They just need a hand on you. Some of you say, please don't touch me. Just leave me alone, right? That's not your love language. I mean, it doesn't mean you're not loving, but it's like, do we have to hold hands? My back hurts and you swing and, it's just like, You just don't want to do it, right? And you're thinking, but when you hold my hand, man, woo, I'm in heaven and the stars and butterflies and there's love, right? And so being strategic is discovering your wife's love language and those around you. How can I efficiently and strategically love them to get the best results? Because if you really love them, you want them to feel loved, even if it's a sacrifice on your part. See, if your love language is touch, then if I marry someone with touch, we'll hold hands and we'll just live happily ever after and it'll all be amazing. And you never really marry that person. You always marry opposites, don't you? That's just the way it works. So there's touch, there's talk. Oh, Lord, I'm not a talker. So there's some that need to talk and get everything out in the open and spend enormous time. And that's their love language. They want to sit down and talk, and you're just going, I just want to hold hands. No, we ain't holding hands. We talking. Yeah, do we have to do that? Yeah. So you have to sacrifice to show love, right? So we have touch, we have talk, we have just time together. I want you to be with me. You don't necessarily have to talk. We don't have to think about serious thoughts. Matter of fact, going to a movie is their favorite thing. We just sit here, you're spending time with me, we're watching a movie, and everything's great. Touch, time, talk, treasures. Some of you have the gift of treasures. When you buy something for you, you're off the chart happy. If you forget a birthday gift for you on your birthday, it's meltdown. The marriage is over. Boom, you're getting kicked out. Because, and the other guy's going, dude, it was my birthday a month ago. It took you 3 weeks after my birthday to get my gift. I didn't cry. How come you're crying? Right? Well, but that's their love language. It hurts more. So so when we go to love our neighbor, we have to start looking at how do we love them effectively. And that's why I say sometimes it gets hard. But Jesus said this, the greatest commandment in all the world is that you love him. And here's what happens. In my love relationship with him, he loves me back effectively. He just does. He has a way of saying, are you just going to keep worrying about that? Or are you going to let me take care of it? Are you just going to keep being upset about this area of your life that you cannot change? Because did you read that spot in the Bible where I said, don't be anxious. Don't I take care of all the birds in the field? Don't I feed them? Don't I clothe them? Aren't I going to take care of you? I said it right there that I'll take care of you more than I take care of them birds. And you're just going, yes, you're right. He has a way of loving you and showing mercy to you. When you're mad at yourself, you can't even hardly forgive yourself, and you know you did something dumb. He goes, how about if I just forgave you for that? And let's forget about it. Let's just move forward. Let me show you mercy. And here's the great thing about this commandment is he begins to show me mercy, and I'm on the receiving end of mercy. It motivates me to be merciful to the person next to me. It encourages me to show mercy. So it's an exchange. As I'm learning how to do life with him, he goes, I'm going to show you how to do life with people around you. And those people will watch the way you live life, and they'll want to get to know me because they're going to look at you like, why are you so loving and merciful? You're just human like me, but there's something about you that's very attractive in the way you manage life. And then we have the great opportunity to say, because the Lord has been helping me. He's been showing me great mercy, and I want to show you great mercy. Now, Jesus is saying, and here's the cliff notes, the summary. He said, if you do these things, work very hard at it, the byproduct, the natural byproduct is you will keep all the 10 Commandments. You will not lie as much. We're never perfect, okay? Can I just be honest here? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Don't worship other idols. If we go through the 10 Commandments, don't lie, don't steal, don't take your neighbor's wife, don't, on and on. If I'm loving the Lord and loving other people, I don't have to look at all the rules and try not to do the rules or try to obey the rules. I just have to love the Lord and love people next to me. Here's what's interesting. We're in this season of giving, as you know, because of the fire. And here's what I love is one of these few moments in our society, and particularly within our county, where there's this enormous amount of mercy being shown, isn't there? Isn't that awesome? I mean, we have places that are saying, please don't send us any more. Really, I mean, there are locations that are saying, we have so much water, we could, we could give this away for the next year and still have water. We have all of this stuff coming from people who are showing mercy. And for this moment of time, you and I have a glimpse of what it looks like for everybody in our county and outside of our county going, I want to be a good neighbor. What if that happened 365 every day of the year? What if the world we lived in general was just saying, let's all get together and buy that guy a new house, it just burnt down? What if we all just get together and give those guys a bunch of money and food? And the truth is we love it right now, right? It's fun just blessing people and loving our neighbor. And the Lord knew if all of us would work better at this, then the world we live in would be an amazing place. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes an enormous crisis to get people out of their chair and helping the people around us. So this morning's message, Jesus is saying to you and I, we need to be a little more proactive as to who is our neighbor and who can we help. And here's what we know, that the Lord will supernaturally connect you and I, the church, as well as you as individuals, relationally with people who are in need, that are our neighbors. We have several families connected with our church. We have about 4 to 5 now that we know have lost their homes because of the fire. And we need to be praying for Israel. Israel is one of our family members. How many of you know Israel? He's an awesome young man, been attending our church for about 5 or 6 months. He is a counselor for blind children at a blind camp on Mount Veeder. And he went on vacation during the fire to see his mom and dad. His mom has a degenerative eye disease that's made her blind, and he is in the process of the same illness. He has a degenerative eye disease, and so his blindness is, unless the Lord changes things, is coming in his future. But he is a remarkable young man. He's 21 years old. He coaches kids. He counsels kids. He got a phone call. We didn't know this for about a week or two. He got a phone call, and the employer said, listen, we love you, you're amazing, but the place that you were staying, the room we gave you for up here at the campground is completely burned down. You've lost all your stuff, and you're going to need to file for unemployment because we won't be able to employ you because half of our facility is burnt down. And so he is somebody that we are obviously going to be blessing financially and with what we have. He's part of our family, and we're going to bless him. We have other family and friends here who have extended family and friends that we're trying to bless. And it's fun to bless them. And here's what I know about those situations that's similar to this story that we're going to read this morning. And it's called the Samaritan story. How many of you have heard that phrase before? The Samaritan house is an industry that blesses people. The Samaritan purse, and they're connected with the shoe boxes, correct? And Billy Graham's son is in charge of that, right? Great organizations. And here's what's unique. When you read through the Bible, the Samaritan people were not really the favorite most people in the world. As a matter of fact, the Samaritan people lived in the north, and the children of God lived in the south. And there was a division, and a lot of the children of Israel, the Israelites, were up at the north, the children of God, and they began to intermarry with people outside their nationality. And unfortunately, there became a prejudice from those in the south who basically said, you guys are half-breeds, you're not holding to our traditions, and they began to claim that the Mount Gerizim up there was the holy temple instead of the one in Jerusalem, and a lot of fighting began to go on. So here's what happened. They would begin, the Israelites, the children of God down in Jerusalem, had enormous prejudice, so much so that they would never go through that town. The straight shot between them and the north would be able to go through Samaria, and they would go around Samaria. You'll hear moments where a Samaritan woman looks at Jesus and goes, why are you talking to me? I'm a Samaritan woman. You're a Jew. You guys don't talk to us. There's just too much prejudice. And Jesus began to break down those barriers and say, we don't do that. Jesus is saying this is what it looks like to love your neighbor. We love everybody that's in need. But when I say that this morning, the tricky part is who is really in need? You know, when we talked about this in men's group, there are some people you meet who can help themselves and they're not helping themselves, right? Then it becomes difficult. How do I help them? I can help them by getting a job. You come sit in my office, we'll fill out an application, I'll show you how to interview, and we'll get you a job. So helping sometimes has to be strategic, but here's what happens if we're not careful. We can get to a spot where we don't want to help anybody too, right? Sometimes you'll help somebody and you go, oh man, I shouldn't have helped that guy. I think I I enabled him. And we probably all made that mistake. But here's what I know. You have to be careful about getting too caught up into that, or you'll just not help at all, right? There are moments where you just have to say, God, do you want me to help that person or not? And the Lord will just, and the Lord will say, yeah, this time I do. They've been there for 4 weeks and you haven't helped them, but today I want you to help them. And they're holding a sign, and they've been holding the sign for 4 weeks, which kind of means they need to move on, right? There's a guy in our town who has pants that are completely ripped, and he's hanging out the bottom of his pants. And one of our church members tried to give him several brand new pants, and he said no. He says he can't make any money if he puts new pants on. He needs these old ugly ones because he makes more money. So that person, you have to help in a different way, right? You have to say, son, I love you, we ain't giving you no new pants, but I need to show you how to walk out of the life that you're living, right? And so it gets a little tricky, but as we look at this story, I want to read it, and I want you to see that Jesus said, the greatest commandment is to love God, love your neighbor. And then as we look at the Samaritan passage, this guy says, this legalist guy says, well, who's your neighbor? Who should I really, really help? And then Jesus begins to describe who that is. So let's look at this passage, would we? It's in Luke chapter 10, it's verse 30. And he looks at Jesus and he said, so Jesus, you said, love God, love your neighbor. And then he looks at Jesus and he says, so listen, who is my neighbor? I'm not doing this real well. I don't really want to go down this road. So explain to me legalistically who my neighbor is. And Jesus gives an amazing answer. And it goes like this. There was a man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Jerusalem was about 2,500 feet above sea level. He was traveling down to 800 feet. It's about a 17-mile journey. And this young man is moving his way down to a place called Jericho. When he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. What I want you to notice about the man that Jesus is describing is everything that happened to him was not because of anything that he did. Do you see that in the story? Meaning he's not financially destitute because he had an alcohol problem. He's not financially destitute because he's angry and bitter and has driven off everybody in his life. This is something, and that's true of where we're at today, right? We have many friends who are victims of the fire, and by no choice of their own have they become victims. And in that moment, it's real easy for us to help, right? One of the reasons so much generosity is being poured out is because we recognize that. In this case, this young man was just walking down this road. He was in a difficult place, and none of the choices he made put him in this situation. And he's a person who's in need. Said a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So the priest is a guy who in this society, in this time period, would go to the Temple Mount and would spend 1 month in the temple doing all his priestly duties. So he's there, he's pastoring, he's teaching, love your neighbor as yourself. He's teaching what Moses said, love God, love your neighbor, keep the 10 Commandments. It's been 30 days. He just wants to go home and see his wife because he hasn't seen her, and he's the pastor, and he goes and he sees this guy off the side of the road and goes, oh man, I just don't want to do anything. I'm out of here. And he walks on the other side of the road and he leaves him. He leaves him there. But then the story goes on. The Levites were the assistants of the church. A lot of times they were the worship leaders of the church. They assisted the priest. He's coming from the Temple Mount where he's an assistant in the church. He comes down and the passage suggests he literally goes over and takes a close look at him and goes, yeah, he's in trouble, but I'm out of here. I'm moving on. And how sad that is. It says, so too a Levite, when he came to the place, he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Now imagine if they had helped. Think about this. The Lord sent somebody from the church to help this guy. If the first guy had gotten there and taken some of his clothes off and bandaged him up, the second guy shows up, the assistant guy goes, man, we've been preaching about this all week. Listen, let's put my shoes on him. His clothes have been taken. He's wounded. We'll carry him back to the temple and we'll get him to the church and we'll take care of him. That's what should have happened. Now, in this society, this was, they were struggling. They didn't realize Jesus was the Messiah and that he had come. They were kind of living by all these laws and all these rules, and they were getting real legalistic. And Jesus said it's so much simpler than that. It's relational. It's relational. Love the Lord, love people around you, and God will help you with all the rest. And so they did, and they passed on the other side. Now, here's an amazing thing. Jesus is talking to them. He's talking to this Jewish priest and lawyer who knows a lot about the law of Moses. He's talking to him, and he goes, so listen, now there was a Samaritan. So when he says that, he's saying, the low-life half-breeds that's what you guys call them. The town you guys won't go through. The people that you've disowned, the people that you would never help. They'd be the last people on the earth that you would help. Jesus says, I'm going to take one of those guys, I'm going to add it to the story. This is crazy good, the way Jesus is working these guys. They have this tough question, and they're really just trying to trick Jesus. They're trying to show everybody that he's not the Messiah. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And Jesus just constantly gives these genius answers that are simple and we know are extremely effective. When we just simply love God and love others, things happen amazingly. He said, but a Samaritan, as he traveled, he came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. So he took pity and mercy. He went to him and he bandaged his wounds. So remember, this guy's half dead. He cannot help himself. He's bleeding. He's lost his clothes. And this Samaritan is helping what's most likely a Jewish man who just came from the temple. All the Jewish people would have passed a Samaritan. They won't even go to the city, much less go to the side of the road to help him. But the Samaritan himself is now helping a gentleman that would normally hate him and would never come into his community. And he goes over and he says, then he put the man on his donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. Then the next day he took out 2 denarii. 2 denarii is a silver coin. So he had 2 silver coins in that time period. A silver coin was a day's wage. So he took 2 days' wages. He gives it to the innkeeper. And that denarii for a whole day's wage would pay for about 2 months of a hotel bill. Now, if some guy came by your house, he lays over on your lawn and he's bleeding and he's dying, would you go out there and bandage him all up, take him down to Embassy Suites, and I probably wouldn't go to Embassy Suites, right? I mean, it's nice, but 2 months would be just cha-chang, right? I mean, usually like Motel 6. I mean, I love you, but I'm not rich myself, right? But 2 months. You walk up to the guy, so this guy's really bad. I'm going to put him in the room. I'm going to get him a little bit better, but I've got to go, and I'm going to pay 2 months in advance for you to take care of this guy. He probably took him to Jerusalem, where it's owned by a Jewish gentleman. He doesn't even want to let the Samaritan come into the hotel because, dude, we don't deal with you guys. We don't like you guys. You guys are substandard. And he goes, so listen, this guy is one of your guys. He's a Jewish man. He's hurt. I'm going to put him in a room, and I'm going to pay 2 months. The innkeeper's going, well, I'm going to take your money, and he's one of ours, but I'm going to take it. And so Jesus is telling this story to some people who have some prejudice and are struggling with helping people around them. He says, I want you to look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense that you have. Isn't that crazy? Which of these 3, Jesus looks at the man who asked the question, do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? Now, I love this answer. I love it because it shows you the heart of this guy. It says, the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. He doesn't say, oh, the Samaritan guy that we really don't like. It's like he can't even say the word. It's like, well, it's that culture we don't like very much. The guy who showed mercy helped. Yeah, can you say his name and the culture where he comes from? No, it's the guy who showed mercy. Mercy, yeah. He says it's the guy who showed mercy. And Jesus told him, listen, I want you to go. And I want you to do likewise. I want you to do exactly what the Samaritan had done for you. I want you and your culture and you as pastor of the church to start realizing the laws of Moses are simply wound up in some very simple idea of loving God and loving your neighbor. And he was trying to pick it apart. Well, what does it mean to love your neighbor? And, I don't think you really know what you're talking about, Jesus. Well, when Jesus got to tell him this story, boom, he shut up. He didn't have any other answer. You just can't deny that story, right? Jesus lays it out so simply. It's not about living by a set of rules. It's about loving relationships, right? Love God and love your neighbor. So I think you and I are in a great season where right now we are going and doing likewise. And it is fun, isn't it? It's nice to a team, a group of people to come and love somebody who's on the side of the road, and by no bad decision on their own, they've been burned out of their home, or they're a victim. And then there are people who can help themselves, that need to help themselves, and if we're not careful, we can help them and enable them, right? So all of that is really true. But here's what I think the challenge is this morning for you and I, is that you and I remember we still need to do this. If we're not careful, we'll talk ourselves out of it. The dude's on. It'd be so easy to walk by there and go, well, what if the guy that killed him, left him halfway for dead, is still in the bushes? He can get me, right? I mean, I'm out of here. I'm going to leave, man. I don't want anything to do with the cops or trouble or whatever's going on here. I'm out. We can just really, if we're not careful, we can talk ourselves out of anything. And we shouldn't talk ourselves into something dangerous either, especially ladies. I would tell you, if you want to help and it's seemingly a dangerous situation, you should call somebody, get them to go with you and help you do it. There's a wise way to help. But we should be thinking, Lord, you've shown me mercy. I need to show mercy to the people I don't necessarily have liked in the past. I mean, we can be honest. Is there somebody you don't care for? Sometimes it's a obvious prejudice, and then sometimes it's not so obvious. But I always want to ask myself the question, Lord, I want to help the people that you've connected me with. And I don't think you can deny that. If you just randomly go far away to help people, that's awesome. But I do believe that you're on a road like I am, and people will come to us that we're connected with that need help, and we're to help them. And we're to have an eye towards that. So what does that look like? We've said that as we're helping in our church, we believe that we're going to help our immediate church family that's victims. We're already in relationship. God expects us to take care of those that we're better together. We talked about that last week. Then whoever you're connected with that's going through troubles, they're on our road. We're to get on the side of the road, and we're to help them. We're connected with fire victims. We're connected. Last year, Gina started coming to a church. She's had a heart and a connection to take care of these shoe boxes that go all over the world. So we're pursuing that because she's here. She's connected to that. I've been doing this Mexico mission trip and built a church there in Tijuana for 15, 16 years. I've been going down there trying to help people. I've literally seen a little girl grow up in the church. We got her into school. She graduated, and now she's, if I remember correctly, she's trying to be a nurse now. Her whole generation is going to change because of that. Lucinda is her name. And I have a picture of me pouring the foundation of the church with a bunch of work crew guys, and she was there watching us. Her mom and dad hated us. Didn't want us to build a church right next to their house in the dump. I mean, their house is almost falling over. We even went over and strengthened their house for them. Later, the kids would come to church. All the 3 little kids would get saved because she was like 7 and her brothers were younger. And the parents now got saved, and they are strong members of that church now that help that church run. They didn't want us to come in, and now they're so glad we did. So those were just connections that in doing ministry in life, the Lord has bumped me into. So the road that you're on, you and I need to be looking that there's going to be somebody on the side of the road in our journey. And God wants you to bless them. So you may say, I don't have anything to bless them with. Well, come back to the church. We'll get together as a group. We'll all go bless them. We'll figure it out. But when we do this, life is amazing. Would you bow your heads this morning? So I think we'd all beat ourselves up sometimes a little too much and say, oh, I could be a better neighbor, I could be a better neighbor, I could be a better neighbor. You can say that till the day you die, and you probably could be a better neighbor. But it's not to feel guilty, okay? God just doesn't want you feeling that way. It's not about, oh, I've been a bad neighbor. It's about, okay, God is just saying, I need to keep this at the forefront of my mind, that there will be people in my life that somewhere in life will be on the side of the road and need my help. And when that happens, I need to ask God to help me to help them. It's really that simple. And if you'll do that, God will bring provision to you to bless them, as He has been in our church to the fire victims in our community. We are overwhelmed with gifts that are coming, and we have the great joy of giving it away. And the Lord says, I want you to capture this moment and continue to make it happen. Even when the fire problems all die down, a lot of these people will still need love and help, and we need to remember them. They're still on the side of the road. They need 2 months, if you will, of silver coins to get them back to health. Amen.